All right, well, thank you for coming. Thanks to the unprecedented intervention in the private sector by the United States government, the government now owns banks, insurance companies, auto companies, and if you look at this list over here, the amount of government ownership is literally blinding. How many companies now that the United States government has invested in or owns. And what's, I guess, troubling about all that is the federal government increases its equity stake, its ownership in many of these companies, there's also the temptation to become more involved in the day-to-day management of a lot of these companies. And that, I think, is a very bad precedent for the American economy. It's bad for business, and it's also bad for the American taxpayer. So what we are doing now is introducing a piece of legislation which I would describe as an exit strategy to get the government out of the ownership of many of these private businesses. And it's really very straightforward. It just says that by July the 1st in 2010, the government should sell its ownership interest in the private companies that it currently has an ownership interest in, and that it prevents the government from taking an equity stake and ownership interest in any companies in the future. It also says that the federal government cannot, in those companies in which it currently has an ownership interest, dictate day-to-day management decisions like hiring of senior executives, boards of directors, and whether to relocate plants, where to close plants, those sorts of things, which we're already seeing the federal government and members of Congress starting to meddle in. And the final point I'll make about it is that any proceeds that come back in, funds that come back in as a result of sale of these assets, would go immediately to debt reduction. In other words, it can't be recycled. One of the concerns that we've had about the TARP program is, and Secretary Geithner has made it very clear that they intend to recycle these funds. I think most of us, at least I remember some of the guys behind me, I know at least one did not vote for the TARP program, but most of us voted for it in a belief that it was going to be used to buy some of the toxic assets, illiquid assets that were on the balance sheets of banks. It has gotten very, very far off the tracks. We are now investing in car companies, insurance companies, and as I said before, I think that's a very bad pattern, a very bad practice, a very bad precedent for the American economy. It kills the entrepreneurial spirit that has made this country strong. It kills innovation, kills job creation, and so we think that the federal government needs an exit strategy, needs a plan. Now, Secretary Geithner, in front of the Senate Banking Committee a few weeks back, said we don't have a plan. We don't think it's ready. It's time to have a plan yet. Well, we disagree with that. We think it makes sense for the federal government to begin the process of divesting itself, of winding down its ownership in some of these companies. And so we've introduced this bill. I hope that we can continue to build support for it. I believe that the American people are tuning into this debate. I can't tell you how many people in my state, as I've traveled, are now coming up unsolicited, very concerned about the increasing intervention of the federal government into the private marketplace and the implications that has for our economy. So the bill's been filed, a number of co-sponsors on it. We will continue to try to build co-sponsors and also look for opportunities to amend legislation as it moves through the Senate with this provision, because I think it's that important to the American economy that we begin moving in this direction.